I don't really know what the next 5 years will look like. I mean, I guess in some ways, it's that hopes and dreams of like, well, maybe, I'll meet the one and, get married and have kids and stuff.
It's not like...
There have been different guys come along and ask, but yeah, it's just not, they haven't been, the right one. And so it's just one of those things that I'm like, I'm not just out to get married to the first one that comes along. I mean, sometimes it can be tempting. It's like,
hey guys, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. It's Friday, December 17th. I'm really glad to have you here because today we have some updates because what do we do on this channel? We dissect, deconstruct, and try to bring back power to people that don't have voices, in addition to talking about other stuff that happens online. We have been talking a lot about the Duggars lately, mainly because of the trial that happened with Josh Duggar and all of the fallout that's happened as a result of that. And most recently, someone that actually was friends with the Duggars way back before like they were really even famous reached out to me yesterday, which was part of the reason why I actually didn't make any videos, was because I was spending most of my day talking to either people that were friends with the Duggars or just various people around them that had felt like they had no place to go for years to share their own experiences. So I got a message from this person who let me know that way back in the day, they were friends with the Duggars and their families were very close. And they let me know that they had concerns even back then about the Duggars and concerns for the kids. We actually started to get into a conversation about Jana, and with the recent citation that she was given, we discussed what are the challenges of being an oldest daughter in the IBLP and in the culture that they have grown up in. And they gave me some pretty unique perspectives, things that I hadn't really even thought about that I thought maybe will help answer some questions for you, since many of you have theories for why Jana has not left the house. And it's very simple in that context when you hear it from someone in this world as to why Jana has not left. So one of the biggest things is that people are sympathetic to Jana because they feel like she has been forced to take on a huge load of the responsibilities for the household. Since she's been a child, she has been tasked to taking care of the kids as well as to be like the second mother to nearly the entire family. And when I was talking with a couple people yesterday, I learned a couple things that I thought were interesting. One is that when they all lived in this house, which was the house they filmed 14 Kids and Counting, or 14 Kids and Pregnant Again, the very first 1 hour documentary that we saw of the Duggars, they were living in a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home. Now, in the documentary, they didn't really talk too much about like how the bedrooms were split up, and they didn't really share like the sleeping arrangements of the kids. We just knew that they had like bunk beds, and we assumed that like all the boys were in one room, the girls were in another room, and then, obviously mom and dad were in their own room. But that's actually not what was going on from what I was told. So when Michelle apparently was pregnant with all of those kids, she had some really serious back issues, according to multiple people I talked to. And due to her back pain, she would often spend the night sleeping in a recliner in the living room. And because she would be out in the recliner in the living room, frequently, for some reason, she would have Jana out in the living room with her and then whatever baby she had with her at the time. So Michelle would be on the recliner sleeping, they would have the baby with them, and Jana would be with them. Then the girls all slept in one room, and then Jim Bob slept with the boys in the master bedroom, meaning there was one room that for some reason maybe didn't have anyone sleeping in it. So Jim Bob, the boys share a room, the girls are in another room. There's a room, the boys' room, that's empty at this point, and then Michelle and Jana are in the living room. Well, the room that was empty could have been because Clark Wilson was staying with the family during this time as well. Yes. Something they didn't tell you when they were filming the show, and something I learned from someone who was there at the time. They said to me that while the Duggars were building their house, the big house that they have that they live in now, they had Clark Wilson, who is their friend, and his family come stay with them so that Clark could help them build their house. So Clark moved in with the Duggars into their 2,000 square foot home, and he and his kids stayed in a bedroom. How many were in one bedroom? 10 people. So according to my source, the Duggars had at one point their 14 children, the 2 adults, which is 16, plus Clark Wilson and his 8 kids, all staying in a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home while they were filming and building that house. I don't know how long Clark lived in the home with the Duggars. I was told it was like months, but 26 people were living in this tiny little house together. And I mean, 26 people in 2,000 square feet. That's a lot. That's a lot of people. That's like beyond, I'm sure, what the code allows for the number of people to live in that house. And I'm sure it's beyond capacity in terms of the number of people that are allowed to sleep in a room at a time. So if that kind of gives you an indication of like chaos that was going around in this house the time that Josh was allegedly doing these things to his sisters, you have to realize 26 people are in this room, and for some reason Michelle and Jana are all sleeping out in the living room, and then Clark is with his kids in one room, and then like Jim's in the bedroom with his kids, and the girls are in another room. When Jana was young, even from like being a teenager, Michelle was heavily reliant on her, I was told. And then another source, the one I was talking to that knew them way back when, they basically told me that in this world, there is this thing called stay-at-home daughters. And the way that they explained it to me is that in this group, there is this belief that daughters are not supposed to actually grow up to have a job. And so instead of a daughter being taught a regular education and going through school, many of these children are homeschooled, the girls specifically, to learn domestic skills, and they are taught from a very young age that their sole goal in life is to be a mother and a wife, and to be obedient and submissive to their husbands. And so because of that, when their moms start having other kids, the stay-at-home daughters become second, third, fourth, fifth mothers to all the other kids, with their goal being to be subservient to their father. So in addition to the girls working around the clock to help their mothers, they are also pledging their undying devotion and purity to their father. So they have to pledge their purity to their fathers, and they agree to submit to their fathers by trusting their father with just about everything, including finding them a husband. So they put all of their trust into their fathers. They pledge their purity to their fathers. Their fathers are then basically the man that's in charge of them until they marry. They are not allowed to leave the house until they marry. So that's the stay-at-home daughter. You cannot leave. Your father has full control over you until you marry, which was practiced, I am told, in the Duggar household. Basically, what ends up with Jana is that with some of the older girls in this group, some families have this belief that the oldest daughter cannot marry, and that the oldest daughter's job then becomes to not only be a stay-at-home mother and a stay-at-home daughter to the kids that the mom had, but also once the parents age, that daughter then will be tasked with taking care of their parents. Basically meaning that the stay-at-home daughter would not be allowed to be married by their father, and thus the father then believes that they retain control over that daughter. Not limited to forcing the daughter to work and the daughter giving the dad paychecks of what they make. Not limited to forcing the daughter to stay in the home in a life of servitude and slavery. So why Jana isn't leaving has really nothing to do with the fact that she herself wants to leave. It's that her dad has raised her to believe that she cannot leave, and that her goal and her role is to be the stay-at-home daughter. I was told by another source that Jim Bob put absolutely next to no interest in the daughter's education or their long-term goals, because for Jim Bob, his daughters were not going to be productive members of society. Their sole role was to be a mother. Because of that, they did not get training or education in anything with trade that could make them marketable in the marketplace because they weren't supposed to have jobs. I was also told that he wanted to create a world where all of his kids would live with him in one place, and where he could maintain full authority over his family. So for a lot of you saying, okay, why isn't Jana left? It's very simple. Maybe she does have some concerns for her younger siblings, but the truth of the matter is that with the stay-at-home daughter, she has been groomed her whole life to believe she cannot leave. She was been denied education. She's been denied the ability to learn trades and skills and to have any idea about independence. For you and I, it might seem simple for her to want to leave, but for her, it's a deeply ingrained brainwashing that makes her believe that she does not have a choice. So even at almost 32 years old, Jana does not realize that she can leave, and Jim Bob can still heavily restrict her access to the outside world. So because Jim Bob believes that he owns her, he then has her on chaperoned trips. If you notice, when she goes anywhere, she's not allowed to go alone. In fact, when she recently went on a trip with her friend, to go see Ginger, her brothers had to come along with her. So she has to have chaperones with her wherever she goes. She's not allowed to likely have her own bank accounts. She might not be allowed to have really her own autonomy, and she still sleeps in the same bedroom with her younger sisters. So she is still sharing a bedroom with her sister, who is 11 years old, Josie. So her courtships have all but fizzled out. I was told she was at one point courting Stephen Wisman, but I've talked to multiple sources in the last few weeks who have all indicated to me that yes, this relationship was a thing, but once Josh got arrested, they fizzled out. My assumption, and this is purely my speculation here, is that because they required and needed more help with Josh's kids, that it was very likely that Jim Bob might have killed the courtship because he knew he needed Jana at home to help with the kids. That's just my speculation, but based on what we know and how we know that she got this citation is she was spending a lot of her time taking care of Josh's kids. What does this mean overall? If you're in this world, I just think it's very important to state that living and forcing a child to work in involuntary servitude is actually a violation of the 13th Amendment. So parents that believe that their children cannot leave and force their children to work and live for them and not allow them rights, they're actually denying their adult children their 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment says this: neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as the punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States, or any place subject to their jurisdiction. When Derek Dillard referred to what Jim Bob Duggar was doing as human trafficking, it's twofold. One, he's forcing someone to work, forcing them to live in a place that they don't want to live, forcing them to be employed maybe and then pay him. So he is the one that's controlling everything. And then with his daughters, he is arranging marriages and forcing them into marriages. Now the girls will be subservient and say that this is who they wanted to marry. But at the end of the day, the choice came down to Jim Bob. If Jim Bob put the kibosh in the marriage, it wouldn't have happened. So Jim Bob is selling his kids into marriages effectively by either an agreement between the fathers or some of these groups even use dowries. It's unfathomable to me that this exists in this day and age, but I've talked to people specifically from this world, and they keep boxes, some of them where it's gifts for their husbands, and boys, often families give gifts to the wives' families for allowing them to take their daughter. It's so gross. And then once the girl is married, she is under the authority of her husband. So obviously this backfired for a couple of his kids, which was Jeremy Volo. He allowed that marriage to happen, and Derek Dillard probably did not expect that they would have two daughters split off from him, believing that he had arranged these marriages. You can't control the child. Once the girl leaves the nest, she can cut ties because her authority is no longer with her father, which again is why the girls are not as valuable to him, because he cannot exert his control over his daughters after they have been married. And it's again why he can retain control over his boys, because he technically still believes he's the controller of the boy, and all of his boys work for him and are dependent upon his, they depend on their dad for their livelihood. So the stay-at-home daughter is the most simplistic reason that Jana stays there. Now there's a lot of other things that could be going on that we are not going to yet report, but soon enough, more details about what's going on behind the Duggars, in the Duggars home, will begin to be revealed as more and more people are starting to share their stories. All right, you guys, tell me what your thoughts are in the comments below. Bye, guys.